half hour, or probably longer, we would sing. We sang erbij, nou we zijn erbij, naar maar nog niet helemaal. Which means, we're almost there, but not quite yet, which is kind of irritating to an hour away. And we sang it over and over and over. Probably drove my parents absolutely nuts. But they taught us that song, and they didn't complain. When we were at Rose Hill, we used to gather around the piano at night, and my grandfather Joe would play. We would all sing together, and my dad and Jim, who you just heard, sang the loudest. And sometimes we danced to show tunes. And my dad could cut a rug with my mom. And now it seems like a different life, because none of us were under the thrall of mobile phones or tablets or internet streaming. We didn't do that. When I was about 13, I discovered my dad's record collection, Marian Anderson. What a revelation. He told me he bought that record in Paris when he was a teenager. I sometimes think about what Paris would have been like for him back then. As a teenager, I was also required to compete in the yearly science fair. To be honest, this was never something I particularly enjoyed, but my dad loved it. One year, I decided I was going to base an entire project on electromagnetic radiation. I don't know why that entered my head, but I remember wrapping huge copper coils round and around and around. What exactly I was doing, I don't recall, except for this very pertinent detail. I blew up my father's amplifier off the stereo system. The stereo system that we were not allowed to use without explicit permission. I was mortified and worried, but he took it surprisingly well. My father had a temper, but strangely he didn't get upset when I told him I blew up his stereo. Perhaps it was because it was in the pursuit of science. My father was an engineer through and through, and he loved physics most of all. All three of us daughters shared the terrible experience of having him explain a math or physics problem to us in high school. He would be so interested in the subject matter that he would drill down to basics to ensure that we understood the fundamentals of whatever it is that we were asking about. This simple question usually resulted in about a 2-hour consultation and often ended badly. My father was thrilled when I signed up for first-year engineering physics in university, but one semester was sufficient for me to realize this was not at all what I was interested in. However, imagine his delight when I ended up marrying somebody who also loved math and physics. At this time, I should point out that my husband cannot carry a tune. One of my favorite memories of my father is from my wedding. He walked me up the aisle, and we stood there together to sing a hymn. But this was a hymn that neither he nor I were familiar with. And at the front of the church, there's no handy pew where you can reach a hymnal. So we had no way of knowing what the words were. This didn't slow my dad down one bit, as he belted out quite loudly, da 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 da, with exuberance. And I looked at him, and I thought, what the hell? I joined in with da 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 da, because I thought, I mean, if not at your own wedding, when then? My husband, Michael, had his own father pass away when he was 16, when Michael was 16. After we got married, I noticed that my dad gradually started giving advice to Michael. Mostly about work, about the politics and the shenanigans that occur there. It was usually very practical and sage advice. And I think my dad was trying to help fill the gap that he perceived existed, even though by this time Michael was well into adulthood. my 20s, I graduated from veterinary medicine school and started my first job as a veterinarian. My grandmother, the mother of my father, who ran a dairy farm with my grandfather, told me that vets were very highly respected in their community of Friesland. And that was her understated Meijer family way of telling me she was very proud of me. Of course, my father was also very proud of me, but he was proud of all his daughters. I did not feel that being a vet made him any more proud of me than he was of my sisters. During vet school, I was too busy to do anything except school, but I missed music. I promised myself that I would buy a piano after I graduated and got a job. Unfortunately, after 1 month of salary, the Baldwin piano I wanted, I could not afford. But I instantly knew how I could get it. I phoned up my dad. Without hesitation, he let me borrow the money, and after about 5 or 6 months, I paid him back. My first year in rural practice was predictably brutal. I look back now with fondness, but it was long hours, a really heavy caseload, physically exhausting, inexperience, many emergency night calls, and very difficult clients. My father patiently listened while I regaled him with my troubles and challenges, often centered around handling one or another blockhead. Then, after my first year was completed, he said to me, "After this, you are not afraid of anything." That was a very powerful thing to say to me. I mean, his conviction in me was remarkable. What a wonderful gift he gave me by telling me that. And I immediately agreed with him. Yes, I am not afraid of anything, you are right. And I thought, what freedom, I am not afraid. After I had children, I realized that's not true. I'm afraid of many things, but not blockheads. I thought I learned this from being a veterinarian, but actually, I learned this from my father. My dad was pragmatic and straightforward, a direct person. I can think of many words to describe him, but whimsical is not one. And yet, one summer, when I was visiting their house in Wilcott, a few years after they had lived there, I was astonished to discover the big tree in the backyard had OM plus PM in a heart carved on the trunk. When we were little girls, once we received a big mannequin head so that we could play with her hair. My 2 older sisters got in a fight about who could play with their hair. So my dad let one of them, it was surely Susanna, style and play with his hair to her heart's content. My father loved us all very much, and I am lucky that he was such a big part of my life. My father loved to sing, so let's sing together.
Thank you.